よく決断してくれた。苦労もかけるだろうが、俺の全てをお前に捧げよ
う。なんだか照れちゃうな。でもとっても幸せ。
Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. We're going to be talking about Dynasty Warriors today. This is the first really big release for the year for me. That's not to say I haven't played a lot of great games already. It's been a kind of intimidating year as far as that is concerned, but Dynasty Warriors is particularly close to my heart. So the release of Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires was always something that I was going to be looking forward to a great deal. You can check out my review on digitallydownloaded.net, but the long and short of it is I absolutely love this game. I'm not surprised that I love the game, but I do appreciate that I can continue to love each game in this series as they get released, because they do release a lot of them. Koei Tecmo has an amazing strike rate with getting these things out, and since discovering the Warriors extended series from Samurai Warriors 3 on the Wii, I would have to have played dozens of them by now. So the fact that I'm still actively interested in playing each new one and keen to see what they bring to the series each time should say a lot about just how much I love this series. Of all of them, I think Dynasty Warriors 9, or Dynasty Warriors Empires, the Empires sub-series in particular has a strong resonance with me because I think Koei Tecmo generally does a great job in representing the various properties through their games, but Empires and Dynasty Warriors is a particularly good combination that I think does the very best job of capturing the essence of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the book that this series is based on. So what do I mean by that? If you've read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and I certainly recommend you do, but be prepared for a very long read. It's longer than War and Peace. It's about 2,000 pages long for the full version. There is an abridged version that you can get, but I do recommend actually sitting down to read the whole thing if you can find the time. If you've read it, then you realize pretty quickly that Romance of the Three Kingdoms as a historical epic combines a couple of things. It combines a sense of scale that the conflict that the book depicts does echo across the entirety of China over many, many years. So it captures that, but it also captures the individual personalities of the major people that were at play on the giant chessboard that was China at the time. So it combines those two things in a way that is really quite fascinating. It is very much focused on the exploits of individuals on the battlefield. So while the battles that the book depicts would have featured thousands and thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, however many there were involved in some of those larger conflicts, it still very much focuses on what individuals did in those battles. And at the same time, it does kind of gloss over the strategic side of things, the diplomatic side of things, and all the rest of it. It's there in the book, but it is very much streamlined. It's like the author really just wanted to acknowledge that these things were going on in the background, but then get to the bit where the heroes were going to be heroes. And that is really what you get with Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, or Dynasty Warriors Empires in general. Empires is a sub-series within the Warriors kind of broader series. So the way it generally works is Koei Tecmo releases the base game, so in this case Dynasty Warriors 9, and then they will do one or two kind of sub-games. Sometimes there's an extreme version, which is basically a glorified expansion pack, which we haven't seen this time around. And then we also get the Empires series, which is genuinely different. And the way it is different is it does try to bring in some strategic elements and some nation building elements into the game and kind of act like a midway point between the Romance of the Three Kingdoms strategy series and the Dynasty Warriors All Action series. So you do some empire building in Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires. There's a couple of different resources you need to manage. In fact, there's three in particular. There is rations, there is money, and then there is soldiers, the number of troops that you have in your army. On top of that, you also need to recruit a large number of generals, and deploy them around your empire to make sure that they can both attack neighboring enemies and also defend against attacks that come in towards you. And that's basically what you do, turn by turn. So each month is a turn in this game. And in that month, you can give one action, which might be to train your troops so that they're better skilled, or particularly the generals are higher level when they're on the battlefield. You can also spend time with your generals to improve the relationship. And the better the relationship that you have with your generals, the better performance they'll have on the battlefield. And they may suggest some particular tactics that you can use, which will have a big impact on the battlefield. You can also spend time recruiting new troops. You can try to recruit new generals. You can try and sabotage your enemy's territories. You can build up your defenses. So if an attack does come in, it's harder for the opponent to capture your area. And you can also build up your town's economy or your region's economy or its agricultural output so that it produces more resources. You need those resources to attack opponents, and so on and so forth. The goal being to conquer all of China across a number of different states within the game. So it starts off with the option, the first entry kind of campaign can be the Yellow Turban Rebellion, which is the kind of the starting point of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story. But there is another dozen or so, not dozen, maybe half dozen. There's a bunch more scenarios. I never counted them. There's a bunch of other scenarios that you can play through at various states over the subsequent years that are represented within the book. So in some of the scenarios, there'll be generals that have an overwhelmingly powerful presence within the game at the start, and your job is to either take control of that general and then conquer the rest of China, or somehow turn the tide so that you become the dominant power. At other times, it's much more balanced, and it's much a matter of whoever can build up their territories the quickest. So that's the kind of the context of Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires. And it is just ideally suited towards the book because it does do that streamlined process of highlighting the fact there is strategic stuff that is going on in the background, highlight that there are alliances being formed and broken, and also that it is very fluid, because one of the great things about Romance of the Three Kingdoms is that it is very Game of Thrones-like in the way that allegiances and alliances tend to crop up and break down in a very quick fashion. It was all very cutthroat back then, and this game does a good job of capturing that in a very simplified, abstract way. Ultimately, the success of your campaigns will be down to you as an individual, though, and that too is reflective of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the book, in that you take control of this great general who is on the battlefield each time and is very much not single-handedly responsible for capturing territories, but very much the kind of deciding influence. So if you play well, then you'll capture the territory much easier than if you play badly. If your character gets defeated quite early, then it's kind of, game over and all that kind of stuff. So it does reflect the importance of your general on the battlefield. All of this is actually more authentic to the book because it is streamlined than Romance of the Three Kingdoms itself. If you play the Romance of the Three Kingdoms games, then what you get is a very complex and much more historically authentic take about what strategy would have actually occurred in that time. It is still based on the book, still features the same generals, but it is a little bit too cerebral for what the book is really depicting. That book is kind of the equivalent of an action book from yesteryear. It's a very old book at this point, and the action scenes aren't quite as vivid as you might get in youth fiction these days, but that is really what the book is. It is fundamentally an action epic. And Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires just hits the perfect notes that it kind of nails all of that. The other interesting thing about Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires is that it is much more streamlined about getting you into the action, where the other Dynasty Warriors games are much more focused on the story with kind of lengthy cutscenes, introductions to each battle and all that stuff. Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires is much more short on the cutscenes. If you do happen to get your character married, which you can do, then you'll get a short 30-second clip. But really, the focus is much more about just moving you into battlefield to battlefield from the campaign map to the battle maps once they pop up. So it is a much more streamlined kind of game. And for that reason, even though it is a offshoot or sub-series, if you want to call it that, to the base Dynasty Warriors, this is actually the series that I would recommend to newcomers, because the strategy is very simple. You don't have to be a fan of strategy to enjoy that element, and it kind of works as a gateway drug into strategy because of that. But it also gives you that ability to get in with the action and just enjoy the fluid, dynamic action of a Dynasty Warriors game without having to worry about the history stuff and all that, if you're not that interested in it. If you are interested in it, then it's there in spades, and I can attest to that. But if you're not that interested in it, if you just want to play this as an action game with some light strategy elements, then you can just get as much out of it. And it may well be from there that you want to explore some of the other Warriors games. So I would definitely recommend this game to newcomers of the series as probably the best place to start that Koei Tecmo has presented so far. One final thing I do need to note is this game has nothing to do with Dynasty Warriors 9, even though they share the same title. You may remember that Dynasty Warriors 9 was a controversial game. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, but I think I might have been the only critic that did so. Their attempt to make an open world Dynasty Warriors, and it really was open world. You could actually travel across the entirety of China if you wanted to in a game. That attempt to kind of make an open world Dynasty Warriors fell flat with a lot of other critics. This one is not open world. You can explore the cities just as you would with an open world game in between battles, but you don't have to do any of that stuff. You can just focus on battle map to battle map to battle map, and those battle maps work much like traditional Dynasty Warriors experiences. So there we go. That is my very rambling enthusiasm for Dynasty Warriors 9. Once again, it is the best take on Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the book that I think Koei Tecmo has produced. And ultimately, that is the point, isn't it? Dynasty Warriors and Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the game series, they were attempts to take that book and turn it into a video game. So the fact that this one is the most successful at doing so should speak to volumes to its quality as a game and a statement of intent and execution on that intent. So there you go. Do let me know your own thoughts. I know there are quite a few Warriors fans that follow this channel, so let's have a chat about this one. Looking forward to your thoughts about it. Do check out my review on digitallydownloaded.net, and let's go through the usual housekeeping. Do mash that like and subscribe button if you haven't yet, because doing so will ensure that you see each video as I upload them, as well as get notifications about the gameplay streams I do and all that stuff. So if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, then that is the way to do so. And please do consider backing me on Patreon, which you can do for $1 a month, if not more. If you want to be generous, then I would certainly welcome it, but I do set the entry level at just $1 a month. And in doing so, you get a magazine each month, which goes in depth into all kinds of historical things, into Japanese art and culture, not just video games, but also literature and music and film and travel and all that stuff. Everything that you love about Japan, we kind of look at in this magazine. And it is perfect for people that want to know a little bit more about the country where all these great games come from. So you can have that for $1 a month, and that also supports us with this channel, as well as the digitallydownloaded.net website. Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you at the next video.